Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA predictions for the UFC Fight Night Live, Mark Ward versus Paul Harris. But as always, let's go back to the previous event, UFC 118, for a quick recap. The night started off great with two quick wins on the undercard, but certainly fizzled out as the main card got underway with only 2 of my 5 main card predictions working out, ending the night with an overall record of 4-3 and pushing my overall betting mark to 9-7. Looking back at the fights I lost, I attribute it to a combination of my fighters not bringing their A game and their opponents simply outclassing them all night. My hats off to Frankie Edgar, who did a fantastic job. Fortunately, there's always the next event, so let's move on to it. But before we get into that, I'd like to announce that Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions is now working in affiliation with SportsInteraction.com. All fighter odds and betting information I use in my videos can be found on Sports Interaction's website. From first-hand experience, I know that Sports Interaction is a great site for all your online MMA betting and tons of other sports as well. If you're considering signing up with Sports Interaction, check out the link below or simply type in www.sportsinteraction.com/KamikazeOverdriveMMA and follow the instructions. Alright, UFC Fight Night Live, Mark Ward versus Paul Harris will take place on September 15th, 2010, emanating from Austin, Texas. There will be 4 main card fights that I will be giving predictions for, 3 in the lightweight division, the main event in the middleweight division. The first fight on the card is in the lightweight division between 11-5 Ross Pearson and 23-5 Cole Miller. Pearson is riding a 4-fight winning streak, including a 3-0 record inside the octagon, not to mention that he's only dropped 1 fight in his last 11, with his most recent win at the last UFC Fight Night against Dennis Siver. On the other side of the octagon, Cole Miller holds a 5-2 record in the UFC and is coming off a submission victory over Dan Lozon at UFC 108. Despite having fought more fights, both inside the UFC and overall, Cole Miller enters the contest as a significant underdog, Pearson paying $1.37 for the win, while Miller currently sits at $2.85. Looking at both fighters, Miller first has solid stand-up skills along with good submissions, where he likes to utilize his long reach to control his opponents on the ground while looking for the sub. Ross Pearson is also quite capable of submitting his opponents, earning almost half of his wins by submission. Pearson has an impressive striking skills, has trained in boxing, and also brings more than serviceable grappling skills to the octagon. The key to this fight will be Pearson's takedown defense. Having rewatched 2 of Miller's most recent defeats, I feel that Miller has a tendency to lose patience with a fight, and when a fight isn't going his way, and this is when he starts to make some mistakes. Against Efrain Escudero, Miller was looking pretty good on his feet early, but instead of attacking from the outside, he rushed in and got knocked out. Against Jeremy Stephens, Miller again was holding his own on the feet and was able to get Stephens down and locked in a few serious submission attempts, but because he was unable to finish off Stephens, he began to fade and eventually fell victim to a TKO. I see something similar in this fight happening, with Pearson stuffing Miller's takedown attempts, either landing a big shot for the knockout or wearing down Miller, leading to a stoppage. So my pick for this fight is Ross Pearson, paying $1.37 to defeat Cole Miller in the opening matchup. Next up is the second of 3 lightweight fights on the main card. This fight will feature 17-2 Jim Miller and 21-7 Gleison Tibau. Looking briefly at the odds, Jim Miller enters the fight as the favorite, paying $1.55, while Tibau, the underdog, paying $2.30. Miller is currently riding a 4-fight win streak with his only 2 defeats coming against Gray Maynard and Frankie Edgar, the current #1 contender and lightweight champion. Tibau has won 2 consecutive fights, and 4 of his last 5, with his lone defeat in that stretch was a controversial split decision loss to Melvin Gillard. Both these fighters bring similar skill sets to the octagon. Each holds a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, along with having very solid wrestling skills. As a result of these similarities, it is important to consider 2 other elements that will play a role in the outcome of this fight. These 2 elements are Jim Miller's impressive endurance level matched up against the size advantage that Tibau will have in this fight. Miller has shown that he is more than capable of relentlessly fighting a full 3 rounds, having done so in more than half of his wins. This could certainly impact the fight if Tibau is unable to match Miller's pace, especially as the fight enters its later stages. On the other side of this is the fact that Tibau will enter with a market size advantage over Miller. Being a former welterweight, Tibau is considered one of the largest lightweights and usually enters the cage weighing close to 180 pounds. On top of this, Tibau will be slightly taller than Miller and, in my opinion, should be stronger. When I originally looked at this matchup, I felt that Jim Miller was the easy choice to pull off the victory. And that still may be the case, but after having looked a little closer, if Gleison is able to match Miller on the feet and use his strength and size advantage to give him the edge, especially if the fight hits the mat in the wrestling department, I think he'll be able to control Miller enough to secure the win. So my pick for this fight is the underdog, Gleison Tibau, paying $2.30 to win a decision victory over Jim Miller. In the co-main event of the night, Ultimate Fighter winner Efrain Escudero brings a 13-1 mark into his matchup with undefeated 13-0 Charles Oliveira. Escudero's coming off a solid rebound victory over Dan Lozon at UFC 114, following his first career loss against Evan Dunham. Charles Oliveira is looking to build on an impressive 41-second submission victory in his debut on the UFC on Versus 2 event over Darren Elkins. This fight was put together and moved into co-main event position following a rash of injuries. This has two meanings. First is that there are no odds posted for the fight yet, so I'll take a stab at them. Seeing as Escudero is a fairly well-known fighter from a stint on the reality show, and Oliveira is relatively unknown with only one UFC fight, I would say Escudero will come in as the favorite, probably in the area of $1.20 to $1.35, while Oliveira ranges from $2.85 to $3.10 as the underdog. The second thing this tells me is that the UFC brass consider Oliveira serious enough talent to put him in a co-main event in only his second fight. Seeing as there are four well-established lightweights on the card already that could have been put in this position instead, I'm expecting something special from the kid. Looking at the fighters, Escudero's only dropped the one fight in his career where he got submitted by Dunham. He brings an impressive submission resume to the game, having forced 9 opponents to tap out. But he has only been able to pick up one knockout victory so far in his career, which says to me that the power needed to score knockouts just isn't there quite yet. Charles Oliveira has shown far more diversity in his 13 victories, scoring 6 submissions along with 6 knockouts and only 1 decision. 5 of his first 6 fights came via stoppage, while more recently he has submitted 5 of his last 7 opponents. He has demonstrated the ability to end fights anywhere inside the octagon. This is certainly a big step up for Oliveira, and he could find himself overwhelmed in this matchup, but as Joe Rogan suggested after his first fight, maybe we should believe the hype. Escudero relies heavily on takedowns, putting his opponent on his back, and in the footage that I've watched of Oliveira, he likes to work from his guard, and he has success doing so. Also, in the Dunham fight, Ephraim was wildly winging punches and almost fell headfirst into a triangle choke. Again, with Oliveira, it appears the mistake like that could quickly end your night. I've watched as much footage of Oliveira as I can find, and I think that this is a bad stylistic matchup for Ephraim. Again, I don't know the odds of the fight, but I'm sure Oliveira will be the underdog. And I'm willing to take a risk on the new kid, so my prediction is Charles Oliveira by submission, late first round, early second. For the main event, we move to the middleweight division, where 19-10-2 Nate the Great Marquardt will take on 11-2 Rosemir Paul Harris. The fight was originally scheduled to take place at UFC 118, but was moved to this card to help make up for all the injuries. Paul Harris has won 3 in a row and 9 of his last 10, while Marquardt is looking to rebound after dropping his last fight against Chael Sonnen. This fight is certainly an important matchup in the middleweight division, with the winner taking a big step in reaching his title aspirations. Paul Harris enters the fight as the underdog, paying $2.95, while Nate the Great is currently sitting at $1.35. Both these fighters are well known for their superior BJJ skills. Paul Harris is a black belt, while Marquardt is a second-degree black belt in the discipline. In this department, I would give Marquardt the slight edge, but I don't think this is where the area that will decide the fight. Paul Harris has never knocked out an opponent, showing he's not a huge threat on his feet, while Nate has picked up 8 victories via knockout. Marquardt is the faster of the two fighters, has a 3-in for each advantage, and as I said, is a superior striker, which will help him keep Paul Harris off balance throughout the bout. I think that if Paul Harris is unable to get the fight to the ground, he won't be able to contend with Marquardt on his feet, and even if he does get it, Marquardt may very well dominate the fight on the mat as well. I see it playing out in a similar fashion to the fight with Dan Henderson. Paul Harris frustrated and unable to get the fight to where he wanted to go, getting picked apart on his feet and eventually butt-flopping out of desperation. So my prediction for this fight, Nate the Great Marquardt paying $1.35 to pick up decision victory for Rosemir Paul Harris in the main event of the evening. Quickly summarizing my picks, I'll be taking Ross Pearson paying $1.37, Gleison Tibau underdog paying $2.30, Charles Oliveira second dog probably in the neighborhood of $2.90, and Nate Marquardt in the main event at $1.35 to defeat Rosemir Paul Harris. These odds will bring your betting card price in around $12.30. With a $100 bet, you will get a return of roughly $1,230 on a 4-fighter betting card, which is a pretty good return. Before I end this episode, I'd like to quickly mention lowkick.com, your online source for all things MMA, including articles and post-fight breakdowns written by yours truly under the name ScottyJ86. Please check out the site. It's a great site for everything from UFC, Strikeforce, WEC, K1, and much more. And just a reminder, if you're going to be doing some online betting, please check out the link below or type in www.sportsinteraction.com/Kamikaze Overdrive MMA and go from there. So once again, thanks for watching my show, Kamikaze Overdrive, MMA predictions for UFC Fight Night Live, Marquardt versus Paul Harris. My name is Scott. I'll be back here shortly for UFC 119, Mir versus Krokop.